we will take an early look as ESPN has put out their projections for the college football playoff next season. And of course, it's really early here. We do know there's going to be a whole nother transfer portal period after the spring here, but you have a pretty good idea of what these rosters are going to look like. Coaches are in place for the most part. Quarterbacks are in place. And ESPN and Bill Connolly giving their best go at projecting what it could look like in 11 months' time.
Yeah, very interesting list. Pete, pull up the tweet with the bracket because, Bill Connolly, analytics guy, known for being, I don't say provocative because he's thoughtful in what he does, but he's not afraid to kind of get people talking and make bold statements. I remember when he made the list of the best college football teams of all time. He had that Oklahoma Sam Bradford team that lost to UF in the championship as the best team of all time, according to the numbers. So that got a lot of people talking, sold a lot of books. But he's doing something similar here. When you look at the article, it's not really focusing necessarily only on the numbers. He's using some numbers, but a lot of it is on trends. Kind of, these are the teams that have made the playoff in the past. Of course, you only have 1 year of data for the 12-team playoff, and make some bold predictions, and kind of gets people talking, right? It's just finished the 25 season. You want to get people started talking early, so a lot to dig into here.
Yeah, I mean, look, the first thing that jumps out to me is that he's expecting the return to form for Georgia and Alabama right there, just popping out of me in the middle of the screen there. And then Louisville as the 4 seed, would have them winning the ACC there with Utah and the Big 12 coming in ahead of the ACC technically. But the Louisville thing really, really was popping out at me. Not a team that I've heard that much early buzz for. Miller Moss going to be the quarterback there, we expect, as he transferred over there. And Jeff Brom has done a really good job with quarterbacks over the years. So I expect them to be good, but I did not expect them to see them here as the ACC projected champs.
Yeah, the safe pick here would be Clemson, right? Clemson's going to be the highest rated team going into the season. Clemson won it last year. Clemson's been the best team in the ACC for about a decade. So that's going to be your much safer bet, and what most people are going to pencil into the playoffs. His reasoning, Clemson has a tough schedule. They play SMU. They play Duke. They play some pretty tough ACC teams, and he's projecting Louisville to beat Clemson again, right? They beat them last year, to beat them again this year and get in there. When you look at Louisville, Clev Lubin, the pass rusher from Coastal Carolina, 9.5 sacks. He's going to help a lot. Miller Moss, good fit, accurate passer, very smart. You bring back Isaac Brown, one of the most explosive players in the ACC, the freshman last year from Homestead, Florida, from the Miami area. Really did a nice job for Louisville, bring that explosive element to the running game. But when you look at what they lost, Monroe Mills, offensive tackle, who really was a surprise kind of interconference transfer to UVA. I thought they really could have used him back. Quincy Riley to the NFL draft. Ashton Gelati, deep pass rusher, one of the most high motor players in the country, to the NFL draft. Ja'Cory Brooks, another South Florida guy, wide receiver, going on to the NFL, one of the best receivers in the ACC this year. Jamari Johnson, the big talented tight end, going across the country to Oregon. So you lost a lot. Like I said, mentioned, you brought in Lubin, you brought in Miller Moss, Darius Thomas, a safety / linebacker from WKU. I watched him in high school, like his game. But overall, I think you probably lost more than you brought back in. It's not a program that recruits at a particularly high level. So to me, that over Clemson, bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and just a few other things that stick out. The other ACC team here being North Carolina. So Bill Connolly's betting on Clemson, Miami, who was the team to beat there in the ACC for most of the season last year and was in the mix until their loss against Syracuse. Then SMU, who, of course, had their run to the playoffs last year. And he's betting on Bill Belichick, who we've covered the portal. We're big fans of what he's building over there. But I'm not quite sure because, again, we're basing this off of it's a combination of what we saw last year, what you have coming back, what you've brought in through the portal. And I don't know that at this point I've seen enough impact transfers to Carolina. You don't know for sure who the quarterback's going to be. there? Is it going to be the transfer from Purdue? Is it going to be one of the younger guys, such as Bryce Baker coming in? But to just project them as the 11th seed, you're really banking on Bill Belichick making an impact right away.
Yeah, I think what he's saying, reading the article, is that somebody's going to be the new Indiana, and you coach, ton of transfers, overnight success, and that UNC, because it's Bill Belichick, has the best chance to be that team. We've covered all their portal moves. They've added a ton of size on the offensive line. They've added a bunch of 25 recruits. They've really beefed up the team physically. The concerns, like you mentioned, Ryan Brown from Purdue at quarterback, Bryce Baker, the young player from North Carolina, can he get it done as a first-year starter? I think that's going to be the big question. You look at Indiana, they had Curtis Rourke, an extremely experienced player, step right in and do what he does in the Big Ten. So that was the difference from what you see on UNC on paper right now and with Indiana last year. I think UNC, if you're going to talk about a playoff run, that quarterback position needs to get settled, whether it's Brown, Baker. They're going to be learning on the job. I think the experience factor at quarterback will be a limiting factor for UNC in year one.
See a few interesting matchups there with the Michigan-Ohio State one top left. And I think it's inevitable that one of these years those two teams are going to face off in the playoffs. It's going to happen. They're going to be in the mix too often for it not to happen.
It's so interesting. At one point, maybe a month and a half ago, it looked like Michigan was trending very much up. They had just gotten Bryce Underwood. They had beaten Ohio State in that rivalry game, beat Alabama. Ohio State was kind of on the ropes. Then, of course, they win the national championship going that run. But still, if you talk about next year, Michigan, they lose a lot both teams lose a lot to the draft. You'll see a lot of these guys day one, day two. They're in April in the NFL draft. But in terms of Michigan, you bring in Bryce Underwood. You're feeling pretty good about that. We'll see how it all plays out with Michigan rebuilding that defense without some of the players they lost on the defensive line, secondary. But Ohio State, they're replacing pretty much an entire team to the NFL. New quarterback, right? New running backs. You do bring back Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, maybe the first and second best players in the country. That's going to help. But you lose pretty much your entire defensive line. In the secondary, you bring back Ibn, that's going to help. But you lose Ransom. You lose a ton just all over your front seven. I think this is going to be a rebuilding year for Ohio State. Rebuilding year for Ohio State's a great year for anyone else. The rankings, to me, I feel okay about this one. And this would be an extremely interesting first-round matchup.
And then you have let me pull it back up there. Boise State, of course, everyone's going to immediately say the obvious, which I'm going to do as well, that Ashton Jeanty is going to be gone. So completely new look team there. I think personally, I would probably lean towards UNLV right now, getting that spot as the non P4. So that would be my personal prediction there. As Sergeant Morhew just hopped in here. I'm not saying it just because you just got in here, Sergeant, but I do think that UNLV would be my leader in the clubhouse for that spot.
Yeah, I agree. The two spots that jump out to me, Boise State making it there in 12 seed, and then Utah as the projected Big 12 champion, actually as the number 3 seed. So Utah not only making it, but having a better record than the ACC champion or better ranking than the ACC champion. The reasoning in the article that Connolly wrote for ESPN was that Utah was 1-5 in close games. That varies from year to year. Big 12's got a lot of parity. Utah traditionally is one of the best teams. I don't want to say in the Big 12 because Utah's new to the conference, but just in terms of the teams in the Big 12, Utah's had a level of consistency that's better than most of the programs. 1-5, you project that to turn around. Putting a lot on Devin Dampier, the new quarterback from New Mexico, running quarterback, very dynamic, not as productive throwing the football. But Utah's quarterback situation was so dicey. They kind of getting back to their roots, running the football with their quarterback, running the ball. That one to me makes more sense. I could see the vision there. Although to me, Texas Tech, with the way they're spending, the complete nature of their roster, where you have a veteran quarterback, you got dynamic running backs, really invested in the offensive line, really invested in the defensive line, the secondary. I mean, you go up and down that Texas Tech roster, pass catchers, tight end. They have really upgraded what they're doing on both sides of the ball, and they were a pretty decent team this past year. So I like Texas Tech as your Big 12 champion just because of the steadiness at coach. You've added 2 new expensive coordinators. You got a quarterback that is a veteran, and what they've done just at every single position. Money talks. Remember this time last year, we were talking about Ohio State pretty much all offseason. They got Caleb Downs, they got Judkins. All the investment Ohio State made eventually paid off. I think you'll see something similar with Texas Tech in the Big 12.
And then just a couple more things to point out here. You see that potential rematch there, Notre Dame and LSU. I call it a rematch, but the Brian Kelly matchup really is what I was getting to. And they see, or I should say Bill Connolly sees Notre Dame, replacing Riley Leonard and losing some of those offensive linemen, being just okay here. And we'll just talk about what their prediction is, that Penn State wins the national championship. And you understand Drew Aller's coming back, Nick Singleton, that backfield is staying intact. But receivers wise, that was a weakness for them last year. And I don't know that they have the weapons added to the roster just yet.
Yeah, with Penn State, it's going to be about their identity. Do they just say, listen, we're going to be like Michigan, right? We may have a first-round quarterback in Drew Aller, but we're going to continue to run the ball. I don't think that they've added receivers that are better than the receivers they lost, and receiver was a big question mark for them. So to me, this is going to look much more like the Michigan team that won the championship, where even though Drew Aller's there, you're going to treat him more as a game manager who makes the big play and is efficient. And the identity of your team is going to be Singleton, going to be Katron Allen, and then rebuilding that defense. Obviously, adding Jim Knowles, a huge boost to that defensive staff. I like that matchup of Notre Dame and LSU. Those are 2 teams to me that are very interesting. Expect Notre Dame, whether it's Carr, whether it's Angeli, I think they're going to pass the ball better next year. Bring back Greathouse, add in Malachi Fields, that offensive line, even though you lost some guys with a lot of experience, Spindler and Coogan, you got a lot of young talent there. That offensive line is going to be arguably the best in the country. I think their passing game will improve. Jeremiah Love's not going anywhere, so that running game should be one of the best, if not the best in the country, even without Riley Leonard's running. You do replace Al Golden as defensive coordinator, but I think Marcus Freeman, with his defensive pedigree, he'll get those boys on point. So I think it'll be more complete Notre Dame team this year. Obviously, they went to the championship this past year. LSU, disappointing under Brian Kelly so far, but you bring back Garrett Nussmeier, who should be one of the best, if not the best quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference. You give him Barian Brown. You've added Braylon Moore up front. Patrick Payton rushing the passer. Mansour Delane, really talented corner. Jakeem Jackson, another talented corner. You're trying to give Blake Baker the tools to be successful on defense. Jack Pyburn, physical player from a rival at LSU. Nick Anderson, big, athletic, talented receiver from Oklahoma who flashed a lot as a young player. I just see what they did in the portal, what they bring back a quarterback. Now you have some continuity on the defensive staff and with the head coach. I expect LSU to make a significant jump. And if there's an SEC team that shakes this up a little bit, I can see LSU being that squad.